Hi, thank you for joining the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Curtis to my show, who is a person that I found on Reddit where he posted a post about conversion therapy. And I would love to hear his story. So, welcome to the show, Curtis.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So basically, Curtis, you posted about conversion therapy and your parents sent you to like a conversion therapy camp. Is that what happened or an organization? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I came out when I was 16 years old, growing up in Southern Illinois. And my parents, when I came out to them, I had expressed that I wanted a therapist because I'd been dealing with anxiety and depression, as one does growing up in Southern Illinois. And they found me a Christian counselor
Okay.
in Kentucky. So he was the next state over, about an hour and a half from my house.
Okay.
And so it was a private practice licensed by the state. He does actual therapy, but he also does conversion therapy on top of
Okay.
it.
And did you know what conversion therapy was whenever your parents said that they're going to send you to conversion therapy? I mean, how old were you?
No, I was 16, um, well, I mean, yeah, at 16, I had access to the internet, so I had an idea of like,
Yeah.
what the LGBTQ community was about a little bit. But overall, no, I was very naive to everything that was out there. So I had no idea what conversion therapy was.
Yeah.
I don't even really think I knew what pride was.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah. I mean, this was like a small town that I grew up in, very small community.
Yeah.
So,
So it's funny that you're from Southern Illinois because I actually was born in Paducah, Kentucky.
oh, okay.
And my mother still lives in Metropolis, Illinois, so I don't know if you know where that is,
I
but
sure
that's right
do.
across the river from Paducah. And
Yes.
I lived there till I was 7 or 8, and my grandparents were super religious, and if they were alive whenever I came out, I may have been to at conversion therapy myself, but anyway, this is about you, and I wanted to kinda just hear about your story. So, your parents ended up sending you to this, conversion therapy, and then walk me through, like, how you got there, and then what happened once you arrived.
Yeah. So my parents took me to the therapist. So we drove an hour and a half. He's based, and I'm using present tense because he's
Yeah.
still there, in Mayfield, Kentucky. So
Yep.
not too far from Paducah.
Yep.
And so we would go, and it was based in his house actually.
Mm.
And we would go in, and I would talk to him for about an hour, and then my parents, I'd have to go sit in his living room slash waiting room. It was incidentally had like church pews in it,
Mm.
and I would have to sit there and wait while he talked to my parents.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was your typical therapeutic experience to begin with, just intake forms, learning about who I was, what I was doing,
Yep.
what I was experiencing. But, and I thought I was just going to therapist, right? Like, I was like, okay, cool, therapist, here he is. I don't know why we're so far from home for this, but sure.
And did you think
And
there was something wrong with you, or did you just think this was your parents being, I guess they were religious, so were they just being over religious, did you feel? Like, why did you think they were taking you to see this person?
well, they explained to me that they didn't want to take me to just any kind of therapist.
Okay.
I guess my dad had been to a Christian therapist before for different issues. And they didn't want to take me to just any therapist because they were afraid that they would be an atheist and that they wouldn't encourage me to be more active in church and my relationship with God, etc., etc.
Yep.
And so they found him, and I thought they were just being parents and taking me to whoever. But I wasn't expecting it to be someone that was going to try and make me straight. Um,
And what
and
did that entail? Like, what was like, what type of therapy can
Mhm.
someone give you to try to make you straight? I mean, I think it's just insane. I think it's insane also that he's still doing this,
Yeah,
but
well, you can't give therapy to people that to turn them straight. And I can talk about like what the ideal situation would have been.
yeah.
But it was employing a lot of pseudoscience on his part. So I had a treatment plan, and it would go over, like, eating healthy, getting plenty of rest, reading the
Mhm.
Bible, etc., all that fun stuff, right? Probably good habits for a 16-year-old. Maybe not reading the Bible, but
Yeah.
everything else. And but then it would get into reading these articles. I was supposed to read an article called "A Realistic Approach to Attractions," which you can actually find online still. It's still up. You just Google
Wow.
that name and you'll find it. And reading articles and different media put out by Narth and Exodus.
Mm.
And so he pulled a lot from Exodus. If anyone's seen that movie
Yeah.
on Netflix, the Pray Away, right? It focuses on Exodus. So he was really pulling a lot of materials from them and then feeding it into me. And then he would go into, different Bible verses and what it said about sexuality
Yeah.
and what it said about being a man and being a man to lead your family. And um, one of the things that he wanted me to do was to find my inner masculinity and be competently powerful and be the man that God wanted me to be. And just really attacking my character and really attacking who I was as a person, trying to tear me down and then build me back up in the way that he and God sees
I
fit.
see. Mhm.
They One of the things they focused on was that I had built this persona, and that this persona I didn't want to give up, and that it was something that I projected out as being gay and being this person at school because I wanted to fit in and be accepted, and because
Yeah.
when I was in middle school I was bullied a lot. And because I had been bullied by my peers in middle school, I now crave the attention of males in sexual means. And so I created this persona that's not really who I am
So
in
you
order
chose it
to,
is what he was telling you basically.
basically, yeah, that I had subconsciously chosen to be gay, and that no one's born gay because they've never isolated a gay gene,
Mhm.
and that I could change it, and all this different BS. And
Was it
so he
scary though? Like, did it just feel like
no,
therapy?
no, he wasn't scary. I mean, he was creepy, just kind of off-putting, but not scary. And like, it was never anything physical. It was never anything like that. You hear a lot about these people that go to these sessions where they're like beating a pillow and screaming their mom's
Yeah.
name. Nothing like that. It was literally just going into his office and just talking to him.
And how often would you go? Would you go weekly, like, for an hour, just like a regular therapist?
Yeah, yeah. It started weekly, and then later on, I think it went to like bi-weekly.
Okay.
Um, I think that's partially because it was a financial and time strain on my parents.
Yeah.
Um, this man was charging us like $240 every time we would go.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
And
which
do
is a
you
lot of
believe that
money
he thinks
back
that it
then.
really was going to help you be a straight male? Do you think that that's what his do you think he believes what he was doing?
I think he has a psychosis in thinking that it's gonna work.
Okay.
I don't know if he deep down thinks it's gonna work. Based on what I know about him now, he definitely has his own internal issues.
Okay. That was gonna be
Um,
my question. Do you think maybe he's
I
possibly
did
gay?
then, and I know now that yes, he does.
Okay. So
Yeah,
but he's not out or anything, obviously, right?
no,
He's
of
not
course
open.
not.
Okay,
No,
yeah.
he's a man of God, and he's being attacked by the
Yes.
liberal left, and
Yes,
they're
yes.
coming after him. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. That's so interesting.
Hmm.
Um, and how do you know that he's still doing this today? Just because of your investigation that you know that he's still having is he having both men and women come to this type of treatment, or is it just mostly focusing on males?
So I don't know specifically if he's still doing conversion therapy. He wouldn't call it that. It was like labeled under men's issues and men's sexual issues.
Okay.
Very broad terms,
Yeah.
because I mean, there can be men's sexual issues that aren't about, being gay, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if he's doing it specifically, but I do know that he doesn't work with women or
Oh,
female identifying people. Well, I suppose if it was a trans woman, he would try to convert them and tell them that they were born a man, right? That sort of thing.
yeah.
But
Interesting that he doesn't feel that way about women, though, I think. So just
yeah, so actually I had a couple of years ago one of my friends who has a daughter called him and was like, "Oh, I have my daughter. Says she's a lesbian, and I'd like to see her. I'd like to bring her in, and I was told that you could help with sexuality problems." And he told her that he doesn't work with women and that he doesn't have a specialization in that, and that
mm,
she would need to go somewhere else because dealing with women is something that he doesn't do.
yeah.
And I was like,
And
wonder
and so
why.
how long did this continue for these weekly or biweekly sessions? Like, how long did it go on for?
So I was there for about, I think it was either like 4 or 5 or 6 months. I don't remember exactly how long. I
Okay.
wasn't there very long at all. Um, but one of the things that he did do is that when he would talk to my parents, not only was he feeding me all of this, pseudoscience,
Yeah.
religious BS, he would then go to my parents and he would, emotionally and mentally manipulate them
Mm,
and telling them, stuff like the devil's in your, he has made it into your house, the homosexual agenda is all over the place. It's in media, it's in music, it's in the TVs, it's in everything, and everyone's being, conditioned to think it's okay. And so he would like abuse them into thinking like, oh, it's your fault. You did
mhm.
this because you weren't close enough to God and you weren't, following what you should be doing. And so what would happen is they would leave there feeling like crap too.
Yeah.
And then
So were they
we would
blaming them for you being
he
gay?
was partially, yeah, he was
Yeah.
partially blaming them, and they internalized it. And then so when we would get home, that's kind of where the bad stuff happened because
Okay.
that's where I would get in fights with my parents. That's where my parents would be very, very toxic and do horrible things, taking my phone, my car away, telling me I can't hang out with friends
Yeah.
on his direction, watching absolutely every move that I make, and just making my life a living hell, essentially.
Yeah.
And it was a result of what he was feeding them and what
Right.
he was doing. So it was never really being in the sessions with him that was the bad part. It was what would happen afterwards that
And
would
did
be the
your
bad
parents
part.
ever do anything physically, like abuse you or anything, or was it all just taking things away and treating you badly?
Yeah, no, it was taking things away, treating me badly, verbally, mentally, emotionally abusing me,
Yeah.
definitely. Um,
And did
and
you confirm with them that you were gay and or they just assumed it? And, like, how do they say, "Okay,
yeah,
you're"
no, I'd come out to them. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I'd come out to them,
And do you
and
regret that? Did you regret it at the time after you did?
I did afterwards. I
Mhm.
did. Nowadays, I don't, of
Yeah.
course, but Um, I did then. I was like, you know what? Can we just? And there was a part in there where I was taught where it's just one of those situations where you're stuck.
Yeah.
I was a minor. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go anywhere. I could leave home, but where am I going to go? You know. And I did contemplate running away. That didn't last very long.
Yeah.
Um, and it was one of those where you just kind of have to play along, right? And so I started playing along, and it got really confusing for me, especially at that age, because at
Yeah.
16, you're just a mess, right?
Yeah, you're going through
Um,
puberty, you have all these, your
mhm.
body's changing, your mind's changing, of course.
Yeah, and so yeah, so
Did you pretend that you had a girlfriend or anything like that? Did you go that far?
I when pressed, they were wanting me to find girls that I'm attracted to, and so I
Okay.
did have to find a scapegoat.
Okay.
And I mean, they were attractive, of course. I can recognize that,
Yeah.
my friends are attractive, but it wasn't like, ooh, yeah, she's hot, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't that. But I had to pretend that that's what it was. And so then they encouraged me to spend more time with her, which was fine because she was a friend of mine, but
Yeah.
it wasn't, it was always platonic, right? It was never going to go anywhere past that.
And did you tell her that you were gay and that it was just going to be platonic, or did she think there was a chance?
Oh no, she knew I was gay, and she knew that I was going through some of
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Every gay guy's got that, girlfriend that's there for them. So that's great.
yeah, yeah, I had a few of those.
Yeah.
Um, but there was a time where I was talking about how I was scared I wouldn't be attracted to anyone because I was like, well, I'm not attracted to women, but like maybe I can get rid of my same sex attraction, right?
Yeah.
Which is what they call it.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, and then my therapist was like, oh, that's great. Eunuchs are praised in the Bible and like being abstinent. And I was like, well, I'm not a eunuch. That's a very specific
Yeah.
term, a
Yeah.
very specific thing.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really apply. Yeah, again, the pseudoscience trying to make puzzle pieces fit that just don't fit.
Yeah.
Um, Wanted me to. I think one of the most disgusting things that he talked to me about was um, trying to link Pavlov's dogs to watching pornography. And so he wanted me to. I had never talked to him about anything sexual before,
Okay.
like personally. And obviously, I was exploring myself,
Yeah.
et cetera, at that time. But he assumed that I was, thinking about men when I would masturbate, and he told me that I need to masturbate to the image of women
Okay.
because that would reroute neural pathways in my brain, like Pavlov's dogs. When they would hear the bell, they would start
Yes. Yeah.
salivating because they knew they were going to get food. And then in turn, if I did that, I would start associating the pleasure of masturbation with women.
I mean, do
Um,
you think that was he just making this stuff up as he went along, do you
I
think?
think
Or do you
so. I think so. I think he was partially making it up, but also partially ingesting some of the larger like Exodus
yeah.
information that was going around. Um, so I think there was a lot of that. I do wonder if he was trying to probe into like what I do in my alone
Yeah,
time.
it sounds like he was. I was thinking that.
In retrospect, he probably was. I don't know. It was just kind of out of the blue.
Yeah.
Knowing what I know about
I'm
him
sure he
now,
would have liked to hear the story about what you're doing in your alone
he
time.
probably would have liked to.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yes. But I refused to talk about it. He wanted to put it on my I had like a treatment plan that he would give my parents. I told him absolutely do not put that on that treatment plan. I'm not about to talk about this with my parents
Now, did
because he
he
was
ever
going to.
record I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, he was going to, but I told him not to. I was like, do not put that on there.
Did he ever record the sessions or anything like that, or was it just
No, he
okay,
just had his notes that he took,
okay.
which I do have. I do have those notes because when I turned 18, I was legally entitled to them, and he had to turn them over. So because he's licensed by the state, so
As a therapist?
yes,
Wow, okay, that's shocking.
yes, he is.
Um,
There's a whole story about that too.
yeah, I mean, can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how do you get licensed in the state of Kentucky to be a therapist whenever I mean, I'm
Yeah,
assuming he doesn't have his degree in psychology or anything
he does.
or oh,
He
he
does.
does?
He does. He has most of his degrees through a Christian college,
Okay,
but he does have a degree or not a PhD. I think it's just a master's or something
okay.
from an actual university in Kentucky, and he is licensed by the state to be a healthcare provider,
Oh,
a mental health care provider. But I did take out an ethics complaint on him
okay.
a couple of years ago. I worked with Born Perfect and the NCLR to do that, and the problem was is that we didn't know at the time, but he had another ethics complaint
Mm,
against him right before mine. And so when they found him guilty, essentially, I mean, it's
yeah,
not like a court or anything, but when the board found him to be in violation of ethics, they told him if he has another violation, they'll pull his license because he got a slap on the wrist for that first one.
yeah,
But what we didn't know is that because we would filed around the same time before that one was resolved, he was able to negotiate with them to say, okay, anything after this next one that's coming up. Um, and so they gave him that clearance saying, okay, well, this next one doesn't count, but anything after that. So they did find him in violation. They said that he violated their code of ethics through my treatment of conversion therapy, and they believed he had been providing conversion therapy and doing pseudoscience. But because of that negotiation that they had, he was able to get away with my ethics complaint with only a slap on the wrist. They did have some stipulations on what he had to do,
Yeah.
like informing the parents of other minors he was treating, and then I think the previous one was that he couldn't work with any minors, and then he had to tell any like youth groups that he was a part of that he led. He had to do stuff, but there's no follow up. So he got a slap on the wrist for it and
Yeah.
got away with it. And I'm sure that he's still doing. He actually contacted my mom, wanting her to write a letter of support for him, and she told him no and hung up.
Yeah, so tell me about your parents, like, after you stopped going, like, did they realize that this guy was just, like, kind of a fake or phony and that being gay was like, you were born, it wasn't their fault? Like, tell me about your parents and your relationship with them now.
Yeah, so they realized that they didn't like going to him, and they realized that I wasn't getting any better. My mental health was actively declining.
Mhm.
My relationship with them was actively declining. And so we stopped going. And it was also, again, a financial strain as well. It was right after the recession, right? And money was tight for my parents. And so we stopped going. They still wanted me to continue with this treatment plan. They still continued to be bigoted and kind of awful towards me for a bit.
Yeah,
It wasn't as bad as when we were actively going, but
yeah,
they definitely didn't. It became more of like a don't ask, don't tell. Like don't tell, you don't ask me about what I'm doing and who I'm with, and
yeah,
I won't tell you all the gay stuff that I'm doing,
yeah,
right? Hanging out with the gays.
yeah,
And that kept up for a couple of years. And then they slowly kind of came around to different stuff. And then until finally one day, I was moving out. I was moving away to college
okay,
because I went to a community college for 2 years. So I still
okay.
lived with them. And then I was moving away. And then they realized that I was going to cut them out of my life. And I was going to.
Were you
It's
just
like
gonna completely not talk to them again after you left?
well, I had to finish college first
Okay,
because I was still financially dependent on them. Um, but after college, after I got out and started my own life, yeah, I was just gonna be like, you know what, you guys, I'm out of here,
yeah,
right? I think then they knew that. I think they knew that, and when the realization came that I was moving out of the house and going away and going to be living in a different place where I'm going to be an adult on my own, they
yeah.
realized that they can't have these views anymore if they want to have a relationship with me, and so they changed their views,
Wow,
and so now they're very supportive. I actually went on to work with Equality Illinois and their work to ban conversion therapy in Illinois, and I was the key testifier for that case
that's
in the
awesome.
state. Yeah,
And they supported that.
they were a little iffy at first. They were a
Yeah,
little like, why, we don't. I think they were worried that they would be vilified,
yeah, yeah,
and which, yeah, of course, like you did some terrible shit, even though you're cool now, like you did
yeah.
terrible shit. And but they were eventually supportive after they saw the good that I was doing and all the
And did they
stuff that was
apologize ever? Did they ever say that they were
happening.
sorry that they put you through this? And
Yeah, they
okay,
did. Yeah, yeah,
that's great.
they
And
did.
how and your relationship with them today, I'm assuming, is a normal
Yeah.
relationship, like, you have a good relationship with them now?
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, I live in California now, but they were just out here in April for my wedding to my husband.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. So they're
yeah,
very supportive then.
they are. Yes. Mhm.
That's great. And, how long have you and your husband been together before you got married?
Before we got married, about 3.5 years, 4 years.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
I just celebrated well, we'll be 20 we're gonna be 26 years in September, me and my husband, so
Oh, excellent.
it goes fast.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything you would wanna tell someone that's listening to this that their parents I know conversion therapy is trying to be banned everywhere
Hmm.
now, and, obviously, it's still out there and it's happening, but if someone's parents or family is trying to send them to conversion therapy, like, what's your advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, well, for any parents that are thinking of sending their kid to conversion therapy, don't.
Yeah,
First of all, um, the what my therapy should have been was me going in and talking to this individual and talking about why I'm there and
Mhm.
why I'm feeling the way I am, and helping me feel more comfortable in my own skin
Yeah.
rather than telling me, here's what you're gonna, here's the goal you're going for. That
Yeah.
alone is pseudoscience. That's not how therapy works. You don't tell someone what their end goal is going to be. And it should have been more along the lines of working through my depression and anxiety,
Yes.
that I would actually later be diagnosed with, and being on medication for,
Mhm.
and actually giving me proper mental health care rather than trying to manipulate me into what he wanted me to
Yeah.
do. For anyone that's going to it, I mean, there's not really much you can say, and I've had this happen a couple of times where I've had people reach out that were like, "Oh, my parents are going to send me to this conversion therapist.
Yeah.
What do I do?" It's like, what do you tell them? There's nothing I can do to help them. So I just usually give them resources on what they can go to, and know that there's a large community of survivors out there
Yeah.
that, we've all been through it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, essentially, that there is a way through it.
I mean, is it
Without
almost they have to
being
play the
negative.
game like you did, where it's like you're gonna pretend that you're not gay and you're gonna try to pretend you're attracted to females just to get
Yeah,
through until you're an
yeah. I
adult?
mean, what do you say? Because it's like you've got these minors, that are going through this. Just contacting you is putting them in danger,
Yeah.
right? And just, what can you do? You can't go and take these children, right? There's no sort of laws saying that, because parents are threatening conversion therapy, they're going to be
Yeah.
taken away.
Yeah.
That's, what do you do? So the
And
only
kids
thing that
end
you
up
really
running
can do,
away a lot of times,
they
also, like you
do.
said, you actually tried to run away at one point, right? And that didn't last
And I
long?
thought about it, but I had nowhere to go. So it's
Yeah.
like, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah, and especially kids are the suicide rate is so high in the LGBTQ community now, for young kids, and it's just sad that that could be part of the reasons why that some of these
Oh,
children are
absolutely.
doing this, and I think it's really sad that parents aren't more understanding. What's your
Mhm.
relationship kind of with religion and God now that this is all over?
I left religion
Okay.
a while ago. I just Christianity
Mhm.
or organized religion as a whole was not for me.
Yep, I understand.
Um, yeah, I'm not an atheist, but not a, Christian or any sort of Abrahamic religion follower.
Yeah. And what's your
Just got my
parents' relationship with Christianity now?
Oh, they still are. They still go, to church, as far as I know. They have a relationship. I mean, they were never really overly religious. Like, we weren't evangelical, we weren't Baptist
Yeah.
or anything like that. Those Baptists, or Mormon, but, we went to a Disciples of Christ church, which was one of the first churches to be accepting of LGBTQ people,
Okay.
like as a whole, like on
Yep.
a national scale. So, it was really surprising to me how they reacted with it. And I think it was mostly the, kind of the small town Midwest type thinking that gay people are going to live unhappy lives and they're going to get AIDS and they're going to die.
Yeah.
That was their thinking.
And has I wanna talk a little bit about your before we end the episode, to talk a little bit about your organization, but the
Yeah.
organization that you run, have you had kids reach out to you that have been sent to, like, a conversion therapy where they're sent away and not just, like, going to, like, a weekly or
Yes.
biweekly thing? And can you tell me a little bit about some of the stories you've heard from these kids that are sent away for weeks or months even?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, the Conversion Therapy Dropout Network is the organization, and we get all kinds of people. Just it's a rotating door of just hundreds of people that come in. We have a meeting every Sunday called Survivor Sunday at 4:30 p.m. online, and we get a lot of youth that have been through it. We don't ever get anybody that's like actively in it,
Okay.
and I think that's just obviously they don't have access to that sort of
Yes.
thing. Um, One of my board members specifically, we have a video of hers, on our YouTube page, that talks about how she was sent away, locked in a basement, abused, sexually assaulted.
My goodness.
Um, when she was going through it, and she grew up not too far from where I lived, and I think she was sent over into Missouri, um, called a place called Pure Heart Ministries. Yeah, Pure Heart Ministries. And then we get stories of people that kind of went to similar situations to mine. A lot of them, we hear about them being sent away to other families to live with. Someone that was sent to like a surrogate family that just kept them locked in a room. And then when they got home, they were locked in a room. Some of them that were sent to these different camps,
Yeah.
um, where there's a whole bunch of other people. And we also have a large base of older gay men that put themselves in conversion therapy, actually went to like Exodus camps and was part of that whole evangelical movement.
Wow.
So it's really a mixed bag of people. And I think the most disturbing part about all the stories that I hear is that a small percentage of all the stories that I hear would actually be protected by the bans that are being put in place here in the US.
Really?
Um, my story and maybe a handful of others are the only ones where it actually would have been illegal had these bans been in place at the time, but a vast majority of them are not. And so that's a really big problem. Even though I helped pass one of the bans, and they're good, symbolic, and they're a step in the right direction and are a foundation for better things. I think we get caught up in thinking that, well, that's it, we banned it, that's all, and it's not. There's a lot of exceptions, and a vast majority of conversion therapy cases that we hear about fall within those exceptions.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great that you started this organization.
Hmm.
I'm so glad to have met you, and you're a survivor and you're trying to educate people or at least help people that have gone through this. And I think that's just amazing. Can you just tell us your website so people can go check it out? And if there's any other
Yes.
way that they can contact you?
Yeah, so our website, you can find us at conversionsurvivor.org. And there we've got all our information, our socials. You can get the links to our Zoom. We do our weekly meetups on Zoom. And then you can find us on Facebook, Instagram. I think we're on LinkedIn too. And then we've got some videos on our YouTube of stories that we've shared.
Great.
Oh, and TikTok. We're on TikTok.
Good. Yeah.
We've got one of my wonderful volunteers. He runs our TikTok and is currently doing, I think, a weekly video of survivor highlights, like different survivors that have done things with their stories. It's currently happening for Pride Month, so yeah, it's great. We're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, so we have a board of directors and we run on volunteers.
That's awesome. Well, I thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking with you, and
Ooh,
I think
thank
I
you.
said I think this has been really great for people that have gone through this, and I think it's going to be very touching for people to know that they are not the only ones that's gone through this, and also
Yeah,
anybody that is going through this. I think your website would be a great reference for them to maybe look
absolutely.
for help. So, thank
Hmm.
you so much for being on, Curtis. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.